What is going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is, and welcome back to another video with your man, Immersioholic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my Rise of the Julia campaign for Total War Rome 2, Episode 7. Juicy 7. Today we're going to be continuing the First Punic War against Carthage. As you'll remember last time, the First Punic War began with Carthage actually sending an expedition force against us in the southwest. We ended up losing Cassentia very quickly, but the First Legion responded rapidly and defeated a Carthaginian Italian rebel alliance. Carthaginian forces are still in southwest Cassentia, which is quite annoying, and they will prove to be even more annoying as we see in a few minutes here. However, for the most part, it was a crushing Roman victory, which is excellent. First Navy is still holding next to some troop transports from Epirus to the east. We're hoping they'll go to Sicily, but unfortunately it doesn't look like they're going to play ball, and they're just going to sit there floating around doing nothing, which is quite annoying. Now, getting into our first turn, we have a rebellion at the city of Tyrus. This is because chaos from the Carthaginian invasion has caused other Italians to rebel, which is annoying. Here we have Lucius Julius Liber, one of our historical characters, joining us, which is awesome, because I actually thought they were bugged out and weren't working, but they actually are. So we get our first proper member of the Julia family, aka the Julius family, I guess you could say. Hence why he has Julius in his middle name, because he's part of the Julia clan. And that also makes him actually an ancestor of Gaius Julius Caesar himself, so hopefully his military prowess shows in Lucius's ability on the battlefield. We shall see soon. I'm going to begin immediately by crushing these rebels. I don't want them here taking away money from our economy and causing more public disturbances. So we're just going to auto-resolve these Greek rebels away instantly. Interesting to point out that they're actually Greek and not Italian. It's because Tyrus has a culture that is highest with the Greek culture, actually, because it was held by Epirus and was originally a Greek colony, actually, which is quite interesting. But we're going to enslave them, as we will with almost all of our captives. And then, because I was drawn away from Cassentia, the Carthaginians are going to come in and stab us in the back. I'm not sure how they got a few extra troops. It looks like they have from the remnants of what we obliterated earlier. But either way, it's more than enough to wipe out our basically empty garrison, which is not good. We're going to lose the town of Cassentia. I do take an auto resolve with an aggressive stance to hopefully try and thin down their numbers, but it's not really going to do anything, not while our garrison is so limited. Luckily for us, though, they're not actually going to liberate the town like they did last time, which was very annoying. Instead, this time, they're just going to sack it. Here, though, the Ligurians are finally coming in with the knives to our backs, these backstabbing bastards. The Ligurian Confederation is going to be the first Gaulish tribe to declare war on us, and then, to be honest, I'm just going to tell you guys straight up, the Insubres are going to join literally in the next turn. Although they don't join here, for whatever reason, they actually join as soon as I end my next turn, which is very annoying. And so, the north is going to be our top priority, militarily at least. However, for now, I can't ignore the Carthaginians. If I do, they're going to cause more and more issues. So I'm going to have to wipe out their last enemy force here. I am just going to auto-resolve them though. I probably shouldn't have. But at the end of the day, their force is so small. The First Legion is so strong. And we can replenish very easily at Cassentia. So I figured we'd just take the small casualties that we would. And it was pretty small. It wasn't a bad hit at all to our numbers, and we'll recover them within a turn. We'll enslave those Carthaginian scum, and then we'll focus back on the north up here, with Lucius actually getting his first command. He'll be recruiting the 2nd Legion. I'll be renaming it to the 2nd Legion, and he will be recruiting some proper Roman troops in Rome itself. Now, I know that we cannot afford a full 2nd Legion, and I also know we can't recruit them in time before the Ligurians and Insubres come down and invade, but what we can do is recruit some and then send them north to Arretium to try and defend against the Ligurians that are on their way down. As you can see here, the Insubres do join the enemy. Very, very annoying, and to be honest, this could be absolutely devastating. I don't want to over-exaggerate. I'm just trying to be real with you. These two nations have the ability to spam a lot of crappy troops at us, and we have the ability to recruit, very good troops, but very slowly, because our economy is still in shambles from the last couple of years. So this is going to be very tough. We're going to have to be fighting battles that are really against us. It's just not looking very good right now. I need to get the First Legion up here as soon as I'm done with dealing with Carthage, but I won't be done with Carthage anytime soon, so I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Straight away, I send Lucius up to Arretium with the Second Legion, I should say. And instantly, as soon as I end the turn, we get our first battle against the Ligurians. So here we are. They have a fairly typical Gaulish army, bunch of skirmishers, some archers, some poor cavalry, and basically a crap ton of bad units, but they are decent against us considering we have mainly a militia army. And here we are on the battlefield. The enemy's going to do what Gauls do best, and that is rush. And they're going to rush the crap out of us. You'll see this when we're fighting different factions. They will all approach things differently. That is actually part of the AI's programming. And part of the programming here is for the Gauls to rush us, that is what they did for the most part historically. They're going to be sending their cavalry forward first. There isn't a lot to say about my army composition. We just have Italian militia spearmen that are going to be holding the main line. We're going to be trying to draw them into that sort of death pit to the right there, where hopefully they'll get trapped inside the corridor, and then my slingers can do some work. Now, I'm not really one to use a lot of slingers. I don't really like them in general. In fact, I've never really used them in previous campaigns. But here we're going to see just how devastating they are against cavalry, but also against infantry over a long period of time. And I'll be showing you guys why in a minute or two. But as you can see, the first barrage instantly is slaughtering some of the cavalry, which is awesome. The enemy does outflank us, so it's not going to be just a suicide charge down one alley. The mercenary cavalry is coming around, and they're going to be engaging my lightly defended side that has a couple armed citizens, spear militia unit, and one unit of Italian swordsmen. So definitely a weaker side, but it is also the side where our reinforcements will be coming to. Lucius himself will be leading the reinforcements and helping the militia deal with this very cavalry unit very shortly. Meanwhile, on the main front line here, you can see the Gauls are starting to send their infantry in, and almost all of their infantry will have javelins, and that is really one of the strongest things about them, is that they will shower you with javelins, just like most of our troops will, especially going forward once we get legionnaires, Stadi, and Principes that are properly reformed and upgraded. But for now, we're going to be the ones suffering from the javelin barrage, and it absolutely decimates my first Italian town guard unit, and they're going to retreat instantly. The enemy is so keen, they're mixing their cavalry with their infantry, and they're just basically trying to blitzkrieg us, just absolutely charging in head on, and they just don't have care in the world. They just want to get in there and win glory for themselves individually. Here you can say the enemy is sending a large chunk of their army around to outflank us. This is quite cool to see. The AI is really trying to take advantage of our limited numbers, and in doing so they're going to be sending about half their army to outflank us. We're going to be fighting on two fronts here, which is not good. After Lucius dealt with the enemy cavalry, we're going to be sending him to clear up archers, but over here, as you can see, the second front line is basically fully engaged now. There are still some more Gauls coming in to reinforce, but for now our garrison units at the very least are fully engaged. Now there is a little bit of a issue with the terrain here. You'll see like a big open circle in the middle where our troops cannot move into. It's just a little bit of a glitchy area, which is kind of annoying, but it's not going to make too much of a big difference. As you can see there, the enemy hitting us with more javelins. Some spearmen were at the rear of the outflanking army, so I decided to try and isolate them from the main force by hitting them with my own javelins, but also my Hastati. My Hastati are probably just as well equipped, slightly betterly armed, but they have far better discipline and we're just far smarter than the enemy, so I'm going to be having my second Hastati unit hold off the other spearmen, and they're actually just going to go in and join the main front line. But my real secret to dealing with these troops quickly, which is what I need to do, I need to be quick about this, I send my mercenary swordsmen around their rear, and we're going to bombard them with javelins here in just a second. It is going to be a recurring theme throughout this entire campaign, where javelins are going to prove to be absolutely just what they're going to be so important. I really cannot express that enough. They are so fantastically important, and this is exactly why we're almost going to decimate this entire unit in just a matter of a couple barrages from a swordsman unit. That is absolutely insane, especially since it would have taken us 4 or 5 minutes to grind through them if it were just a starter unit upon spearman unit, and we would have taken a lot more casualties, whereas here we're just going to card through them straight away. Now back on the main front line, the enemy general is starting to get into the mix, but one thing I wanted to point out is that you're going to see a lot of bodies starting to pop up on the ground around all of these troops, which is interesting because we're not engaging them here. Now what we are doing though is bombarding them with slingers, and as I said earlier, slingers are going to prove to be monumental in taking out these lightly armed troops. As you can see, they are carving through my militia units very quickly. I moved my free flank troops to reinforce my main line, and then a few more minutes later you'll see the utter devastation that my slingers have caused, which is just completely devastating. It really is. It's pretty incredible to see the amount of bodies down here. And of course Lucius Libo, you can nearly call him the Great by the way he's performing, is sending in his own cavalry unit, personally led by him, to outflank the enemy, and then we actually see a massive rout from the enemy troops. This is absolutely fantastic. The enemy general is still alive and he's still involved in cutting through our troops, but for all intents and purposes, this side of the battlefield is basically won for us. The enemy archers will still be firing into the mix, which is going to be annoying, but Lucius will turn around and go and run them down within the next few minutes or so. Now, on the flanking side, which is quickly turning into the main side of the battlefield, my troops have moved in and have started to outflank the enemy. Again, cannot emphasize more than enough the effect that my javelins will be having on the enemy. We're very methodical in how we outflank the enemy. Not only do we outflank them and hit them from behind, but I really try to focus on having all of my javelins thrown into the enemy before we engage. It's especially since my Hastati is still just spearmen. You have to remember, we still have not reached our reforms where all of my Hastati and Principes are swordsmen, but that is coming very soon now. I have my second Hastati unit moving in, combined with some levies absolutely devastating the middle of the enemy's units. Instead of right-clicking on the enemy with my levy units, I actually chose to concentrate fire, which means that you can have them attack a certain point on the ground, and there you can see where they were attacking. There's an absolute massive hole in the ground, essentially. It's pretty incredible what they did. They just utterly cut out a donut and utterly devastated the enemy right there. This is where we're really going to see the battle turning in our favor. A lot of the enemy troops are going to start retreating. They just can't handle the amount of pressure we're putting on from our javelins and from our outflanking units. One mistake I did make here, though, is that I should have had my mercenary swordsmen lead the charge and take the brunt of the casualties, but instead they kind of got mixed up with my Hastati. That's a big mistake I made, but I'll try to keep that in mind for the future. One thing I wanted to point out here is that I'm actually using my slingers to run down the enemy, and since they're garrison troops, it doesn't matter too much if we lose them. Obviously, we don't want to lose troops unnecessarily. But I wanted to point out that I think it's a pretty good tip, especially to people that struggle with fighting battles like these where the odds are so against you in defending a town. You can actually use your troops that are useless after they expend ammunition, or armed citizens who are generally useless, to run down enemy routing troops, and it's actually super effective. Almost all of my slingers had 300 plus kills. And a few minutes later, we have the battle. There's not a lot to show here, just a final charge on the enemy's general unit, and he actually died in that charge there. An absolutely crucial victory for the Romans, and Lucius's first battle turns out to be just as great as we were hoping for. Here I wanted to point out just how significant Lucius's contribution was to the battle. He killed 799 men in his unit alone, majority of which were before we ran down the enemy, FYI. After the Ligurians ended their turn, we ended up auto-resolving the rest of their army away, although annoyingly, we actually didn't kill them all. Their general managed to survive. Very annoying, but all in all, it's not really too consequential. Not really a big deal. But we do know that they have more armies coming, as they are Gauls, and that is what Gauls do. As you can see to the east, the Insubres have already invaded towards the town of Ariminum, and that is not looking good for us. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with Sicily. Now, Carthage has pulled all of their armies out of there. They only have one large, very good navy, might I add, but that is it, besides the garrisons. And so I'm trying to figure out, do I send the First Legion in there to try and maybe liberate some factions to create some buffers between me and them? Do I occupy it? What do I do? And for now, I still haven't decided, and so at this point I'm just going to have the First Legion hold on the peninsula of Italy to the southwest. It's not great, but it's just a choice I'm going to go with, and we're going to try and play it safe, because I know I need to bring it up north eventually, but I don't want to do it too soon and then have the same thing where Carthage evades and takes Cassentia again. So instead of sending the First Legion north, I send the First Navy north, and that is going to be our reinforcing force for Ariminum. We're going to be keeping the Second Legion at Arretium because we know the Ligurians are going to be coming again with more troops. We're going to be keeping the mercenaries and upgrading the army. And then, as predicted, the Insubres do come straight for Ariminum, which is our trading harbor. This is a very important town for us to hold economically, just like the other one is. So this is not good, but the army is about the same as the last one, except no archers. However, our garrison is much smaller and our navy is much smaller, so this is going to be a tough fight for sure. And here we are. The navy begins on its ships. I know, surprising. Not like a navy would be on naval ships, right? We actually have the garrison slingers out here waiting for the army. I'm just gonna call them an army for now, to land on their ships, because we're going to be using them as an army. They're actually going to be our main force, while our smaller garrison tries to hold in a tight town streets and whatnot. We have a lot less troops than the last battle, which is not good. However, our reinforcing troops are actually of better quality because they are essentially principes of our next reform, which I'll show you guys in a second. But the enemy is going to be doing the exact same thing. Not a lot to show here. The enemy cavalry is going to charge forward again. A mixture of skirmisher cav, which will do some damage to our troops, but also melee cav, which will charge in and get in the way of the javelins, which is nice. And we'll actually hit them with our Italian swordsman unit, our captain unit, which I try to avoid getting into the battle. To me, it's a really bad idea to get your captain in. Always try and save him till the last minute, because your captain dies very easily, but it still has the same effect of losing a general. So that's why I'm going to be keeping him in the rear. You're going to see his javelins come in here right now, and they won't kill a lot of the enemy cavalry, but they will do some solid hit point damage, which is great. A little bit awkward fighting amongst these market stalls, but soon the stalls will all be knocked over and the proper fighting will be able to happen. While that's going on, I wanted to show you guys our naval troops that have landed. As you can see, they're essentially principes for the next reform system. They have their own javelins, they have shields, they have chainmail armor for the most part, big shields, and they're basically principes, which is excellent, because despite their small numbers per unit, we have 120 men, they're actually going to perform very well against the Gauls here. The Gaulish infantry is now hitting our main front line. However, we are hitting them in the flank with slingers this time, rather than just hitting them over the top like we did in the last battle. Again, the slingers are going to prove to be a massive force to be reckoned with, and they're going to deal a lot of casualties, but they need a lot of time to deal a lot of casualties. So I'm trying to not commit my naval army before I have to, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to wait until the slingers expend as much ammunition as possible before I get too close to draw out the enemy. For now, since I'm not too close, they're not actually going to charge out on me, which is very interesting. On the other side of town, I have my armed citizens actually outflanking the enemy's outflanking units. Well, not outflanking necessarily, more like running down. Somehow, the armed citizens are actually better than the enemy skirmishers. And we will see my armed citizens come out on top on a 1v1, which is very incredible. I don't know how that's a thing, especially since the skirmishers have swords and shields. Here you're going to see me moving forward my main naval army. Again, I know it's a little weird to say, but just bear with me. That's what we're calling our naval army. Anyway, I'm going to be playing a little bit of cat and mouse with the enemy. I'm trying to get my slingers close so they can do as much damage as possible, but at the same time, I'm also trying to not overcommit and have the enemy army charge out at my troops. We don't want that yet. I do send a detachment around to flank the enemy from where they entered the town, as well as another alley that's on the far side. Here, those flanking troops are going to be engaging some cavalry that are engaging one of my armed citizen units. While we do outnumber the enemy here, it's going to take a while for these troops to actually cut them down, because by this time I think they already used their javelins, but either way, it took a while since they only have swords. And our other unit of the flanking detachment is basically holding against a bunch of the enemy's units, and they're going to have to do this for quite a while. They're on their own. We need to break through the main battle line, which is about to form up next to them, and come in and support them. Until then, we're not really going to have much else to do in terms of supporting that unit. As you can see, my troops are getting their javelins in on the enemy, and again, just absolutely devastating. It's disgusting how powerful javelins are. I love it. It is really good. If you can use your javelins correctly, you can take down almost any unit to at least half its strength, which is exactly what we need to do here. While the enemy isn't going to deal a lot of casualties to us in this melee fight that's about to happen, they are heavy phalanx units, so they're actually going to hold for quite a while. That's why I charged all of my units in at the same time. I was hoping for a bit more of a shock-heavy charge, and the charge was very underwhelming, and I didn't really position my troops in a way that would get them around the sides of the unit very easily, so I'm going to be paying for that by grinding for quite a few minutes here. Skipping ahead though, you will see a few enemy units starting to rout, and that is predominantly because of, again, the slingers. You can see there the insane amount of dead bodies caused purely from the slingers. We haven't engaged that area in melee combat. That is just my slingers decimating the enemy from hitting them in the back while they're engaging my main melee, my main militia, should I say, line. We break through the enemy's main line here with my main force. However, they are going to be reinforcing it very quickly, although we will get a little bit more favorable terms in that engagement, as we now have a bit more room to work with. And over here, my outflanking detachment is actually going to be heading in down the back alley now to hit the enemy in the rear. Our main line of militia is still holding, but they are starting to get cut down one by one. I still have my captain in reserve on the beach, but besides that, our main militia line is looking like it's about to shatter at any moment, so I'm going to start sending skirmishers over there very shortly to try and help hold the line. While in the meantime, my troops are going to be outflanking the enemy, but the enemy does see this coming. While it does seem like the AI did a bit of a suicidal charge, we're actually going to be coming in and attacking them from the flank, and they're going to be countering that. They're actually going to be attacking us. As you can see, my main force right here in the middle has actually already been countered, while my outflanking detachment is still trying to outflank the enemy, but they are also going to be countered. My one unit of the outflanking detachment is still holding. They've already lost about 30 men. They're going to be losing a lot more, but they're still holding strong. It's incredible, the discipline and the well-supplied troops that we have, and just how much they outshine compared to the others. And here, this is about, after 5 or so minutes of grinding, this battle was essentially a grind through the enemy's troops, and you're going to see here essentially a massive rout of the enemy, and the battle is essentially over. I'm not sure what happened. The enemy didn't lose their general, There wasn't any major developments. We did break through the main line, don't get me wrong, but my troops haven't even engaged the enemy by the time that they all started routing, and it was an absolute shattering rout all across the battlefield. Almost every single unit was routing. It was absolutely devastating. The enemy general is still engaged with us, and that's a good indication that he's still alive. However, I'm not too sure why they all routed. They could have done a lot more damage to us, but thankfully they didn't. And we're going to be ending the battle about here with a nice, juicy outflanking charge on the enemy's general, because of course we always want to kill the enemy generals. If they want to lead their troops against us, they are definitely not going to be making out of this battle alive. Now I'll see you guys back in the campaign map. And there you have it, another heroic victory for the Roman forces. Not a lot to say about the battle statistics here. We did capture a lot of the enemy, and a lot of their army was actually entirely obliterated, including the enemy general, FYI. But a few of their units are going to survive and fall back to their territory. We didn't lose any units, although the garrison is fairly depleted. It lost about half its men. And our naval force is actually doing very well, and we only lost about half of a unit. And that was that unit that was caught out on its own, which is pretty acceptable, to be honest. However, I'm not going to be cutting out the end turn footage here, because you guys are going to see exactly where our next episode is going to take place, and that will be against another Ligurian invasion. Now, we're probably going to be going through quite a lot of these. Hopefully it won't be too annoying, and we should eventually be punching it back against the Gauls, but that might take us an episode or two. I don't want to show you guys the entirety of every single little battle that's going to happen, so I am going to skip some battles depending on what happens, but I won't be skipping this one as it is massively important considering how depleted our garrison is and how strong the enemy troops are. This army is actually better than the ones we've faced previously. But we will have to save that battle for the next episode, so thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.